So
ramen.
this pineapple ramen actually exists?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I saw it in the anime, and I was like, "There's no way that that's real." And Mm,
So I
wow.
guess this is a question for both of you guys then. What's the like I don't want to say strangest because it's going to be good to anybody, but like a ramen that you got where you're like I almost don't know if I consider this ramen, right? Maybe something super eclectic, maybe something a little bit off the wall. I mean, I guess I can start because this just comes to mind is I was in New York and I had a bowl of ramen at a restaurant called Ivan Ramen,
Mm,
and I think it was like a Michelin star ramen restaurant, right? Like the only Michelin star ramen chef who's not Japanese or something like that. And it was like this bowl of tonkatsu that I swear was like thick enough to almost be gravy because of how much they
mm,
emulsified the pork bones.
dang.
And I don't remember what it had on top of it. I remember the pork being tender. It was just one of those like surreal experiences of like, is this actually food? Because it was that
Mm,
good.
mm.
And it was probably one of the best bowls of ramen I've ever had in my life, but I don't think I would get it again because it was so rich and so heavy that the next day I was like, I am literally sweating pork in the middle of a convention center, right? So like
Yeah.
for you guys, what's that one ramen that comes to mind for you?
Emily, why don't you go
Well,
first? Sorry.
yeah, I feel like this can be interpreted a couple of different ways for me. Like, automatically what comes to mind is like the most unusual bowl of ramen I've ever had is a bowl that I had this summer in LA, and it was unusual though not for a good reason. It was unusual because it was literally like the worst bowl of ramen I've ever had in my
Oh
life.
boy.
Oh, poor
And
LA.
and it wasn't even that like the soup was fine, the noodles were fine. What really bothered me about it was that I felt like the person who put the bowl together had no sense of like proportions or portion sizes or anything. So like there was very little broth and the noodles overwhelmed the bowl. Like I would stick my chopsticks in and literally just like was just pulling out like fistfuls of noodles, and I was like, the balance is just so off here. It feels like this bowl is never ending. I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. Like I keep eating noodles and they keep, because there are so many of them, they would just soak up all the broth that was
Oh
remaining.
no.
And it was like, and the taste wasn't bad. It was just like a not very fun dining experience because I was like, this is overwhelming and not satisfying to eat. Versus, I feel like when you eat ramen here, I mean, I'm sure there's good ramen places in America, not to say that there aren't, but the kind of style here is everything is just a lot more deliberate, right? You get a certain amount of noodles, you get a certain amount of broth, you get a certain amount of toppings, and everything goes together. So it feels like, yeah, sometimes the bowls of ramen can be a little bit big, but I can satisfactorily eat a bowl of like small size ramen and be full and content and feel like I got a little bit of everything, and it's just a nice satisfying experience. So that stands out to me, but I would have to say like I think there are some, I mean, Frank knows there's some really weird ramens that you can get here. I had one that was an Italian inspired ramen with like prosciutto and mozzarella
Huh.
and a very light broth, and it wasn't bad, but I also wouldn't get it again.
Yeah.
Like it was a kind of an unusual experience. But I mean, I could go on. Frank, what do you think? What stands out to you as being kind of weird or unusual?
Hmm. I, I always use this as an example, but there's a coffee shop, let's call it, in northern Tokyo that, no joke, serves like a soup that is soy sauce and coffee based. They're
Oh,
not
Okay.
using a super bitter coffee, but still, it's coffee and soy sauce, right? Not two
Yeah.
things. So going
oh,
back to, yeah, I think harmony is key, right? You know, that
Yeah.
relationship
mm,
between the broth, noodles, and toppings. That's a theme for cuisine around the world, right? Harmony. You
mm-hmm.
know, you shouldn't have more noodles in the soup, or all the things that were mentioned now. But yeah, so coffee and soy sauce, and then noodles that are infused with coffee as well. And no joke,
Oh, that's weird.
very weird. And no joke, like the toppings, we've got them shaped in such a way that it looks like a face, like a smiling face. Like there's kiwi. The two eyes are eggs with coffee beans on them, ice
Oh
cream in the
no.
middle. And you know, at this point it's just
Oh
getting silly,
god.
but like, and this is, you know, in a country where of course ramen is taken very seriously, but it's a cute old couple that runs this coffee shop, right? Like they're known for their coffee, and they have a wacky interior. You know, you can't fault them. Like they're just having fun, right? I
Yeah.
had that ramen, like I it was not for me, in terms of flavor, right? Because I think there's just so much going on. Harmony, probably not a lot of it, but it was so much fun, and a lot of people go just for that ramen to get the photo because it's so bizarre. But again, it's a cute old couple running a coffee shop, and they're like, let's do some coffee ramen. They got some
Because
locals
like
Oh.
going
I
there.
I think I think you can absolutely do like a dessert ramen that can exist, right? With coffee flavors and whatever. Like I think you like I would think of it as like the tiramisu of ramen, right? Because tiramisu has some bitter flavors, it has some chocolate flavors, it has the cream.
Sure.
You know, maybe the noodles are like cocoa infused, and then maybe the
Sure.
broth has some kind of coffee in it, right? But then like it's served cold. So it's this like amalgamation of stuff. But when as soon as you said kiwi, my mind just like went into outer space. I was like imagining myself having a nice cup of coffee in the morning, and I love coffee to a very bad degree. Like I have a very very unhealthy relationship with
A
it. Right.
debilitating degree, would you say?
Right. So like I search out different styles of beans to get different cocoa profiles and like
Oh
the
man.
different bitterness and how acidic things will be and like how fruity they will taste. And as soon as you said coffee and kiwi, I just imagine myself drinking coffee and then immediately biting into a kiwi and how I don't want those flavors in my mouth together at any point in my
Yeah.
life. That's all
That
I
sounds
thought.
atrocious.
But I still want to try this ramen. So I'm going to have to try it when I come to Tokyo now.
I think you
Well,
should, yeah, bring a friend in case you're like, I cannot
yeah.
finish the whole bowl,
Yeah.
half each.
That's always my
Just in
oh,
case you don't finish it. Yeah.
There
that's
you
my
go.
biggest fear. Actually, honestly, this is a fear that I have with ramen, and kind of on the theme of like weird bowls of ramen. Sometimes I'm afraid of ordering too unusual ramen because I feel it's really rude to leave a full bowl of ramen behind and be like,
Hmm.
thank you, I'm done now. Like I don't know, I don't like that concept very much, but I'm always worried to get a bowl of ramen because I'm like, okay, if I get this, I have to commit to it. And like
Right.
bowl of ramen is no joke, right? So once I there was this anime called Miss Koizumi Loves Ramen Noodles, and it's just a silly anime about this girl who goes around trying all the ramen like in Tokyo basically. And there is this ramen in, I want to say Saitama, I'm not sure, but it's like it's a pineapple ramen. Like the
Oh,
ramen is
machida, yeah,
seasoned
yeah.
with pineapple. Have you been out there before,
I
Frank?
have, I
Have you
have,
seen
yeah.
it?
Before they moved to Machida too.
Oh,
No, Matcha
yeah.
being southwest, yeah, Tokyo for
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah.
So
reference.
this
Yeah.
Yeah.
pineapple ramen actually exists?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I saw it in the anime, and I was like, "There's no way that that's real." And in fact, I tried to. This is back when I was in my food recreation days. I tried making it at home, and I was like, "Wow, that's disgusting. I've made quite a few bowls of ramen at home. I was like, I'm never doing that again." But I was like, maybe it's better in person, and I went, and it was not better in person. It
Oh no.
was, it wasn't horrible. Again, it wasn't horrible. I feel like no bowl of ramen is truly like horrible, but there was just something very subtly like wrong to me. I was like, I don't like this pineapple. It was
So
pineapple
so
infused
is that
broth.
the argument of like I love pineapple on pizza and I think every pizza should have pineapple on it versus the people who hate pineapple on pizza? Like one of those situations where like this is just not for me, or like
I
objectively this shouldn't exist.
I I I don't I didn't like it. I think objectively it shouldn't exist.
I think I'd probably like it then
What
because I'm
I
a
don't
big pineapple
know.
pizza fan.
what
Frank, did you try
I,
this?
I have. I'm curious, like, which soup did you have? So they do like a shio, a salt seasoned soup, right? But one is with shrimp, and the other is
Yeah.
not with shrimp. So I've had it with the
I,
shrimp.
I think I got it with the shrimp as well. And I didn't like the combination of pineapple and shrimp.
I
Which is fascinating because pineapple and shrimp sounds amazing together.
I kind of, I overheard you both talking about, I think, Southeast Asian cuisine before, right? So conceptually, right, when you got that salty and sweet, like they're things I think. So for me, yeah, maybe it's not something I would get regularly, but I didn't hate it,
Didn't
Emily.
hate
Like
it.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like fair enough. Like, is it ramen or not? Like I often use it as an example on the tours too. Like, is pineapple ramen still ramen if we're getting? But yeah, it's
It's
interesting.
weird.
It's maybe it was an off day too. I don't know. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
but
It was again, it wasn't horrible, like I ate it, but I was like, ooh, it just was a really, for me, an unusual combination. But speaking of like weird ramens, I've heard tale, and Frank, you might have more experience, but I've heard tales of really weird things. I've heard stories about chocolate ramen for like
Mm-hmm.
Valentine's Day as like a special.
I want that.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It looked questionable to me. I did not partake.
And I've had a few bowls of chocolate ramen around in and around Valentine's, and like
Oh,
when they're doing it right and not just putting chocolate bars, as toppings in a soup, let's say, it's more like a mole, right? Like more savory than it is sweet. So I
oh,
think, same thing with the pineapple, right? If you're going to do something weird, like go for it. But again, coming back to
yeah.
harmony, right?
But
Like,
make it
yeah,
work, yeah.
exactly. Make it work.